Well, hello my dear friends. Man, it has been a long time since I've made a video. It is so good to be back. If you've been wondering where I've been, I think in the last year just got super hectic with work, then I hurt my back, and then I got sick with COVID. The whole family got sick with COVID for the very first time, which was, I guess, kind of good that we hadn't had it before, but yeah, real pain to have it. Then it was Christmas, and then it's 2024. So, hello, Happy New Year, I'm back. And man, I've got some really exciting things to share with you all over the next couple of weeks. However, this video is not that. In fact, this is the worst video I will probably ever make on my channel. I almost didn't release it, I was this close. But I actually think that this is an important video to release just to show you that my builds don't always go to plan. That's exactly what happens in this, nothing works out. And I also wanted to use this opportunity to talk a little bit more about Cities Skylines 2, my honest thoughts about the game. But above all that, I think the main reason I'm releasing this video is to justify and really just explain the reasons why I have decided to abandon this map and abandon this city and restart New Dollarton. Inspired by the City Planner Plays, who has also helped me along the way to get this up and running, I too have snuck my way into the unreleased map editor and built my very own map, a map that I think is going to work much better for this series. I've poured quite a lot of time and effort into this, dreaming it up, thinking about all the different areas and just tailor making it so that it really fits in with this series, and in a couple of days I'm going to be sharing it with you all. So when I say that this video is going to be a bit of a stinker, it's because this is me working on the old map, the map that I had been building this city on, and just trying to make it work for the context of the city that I wanted to build. I really wanted to make this map really special, and you know, this is going to be the episodes that I was going to be pouring a lot of time and effort into just making this map what I truly dreamed it to be, but as you're going to be finding out, I just cannot make this work. And of course, this is a pretty hard decision to make to restart this series. I have built this map and built up this city for a little while now, and to put a lot of time and effort into the thought of how it's going to progress, but I have made some decisions in this episode that just don't work out, and this map in the greater context of what I want it to look like is not going to work out. And I think what else is happening is I am struggling in Cities Skylines 2 at the moment, I'll be honest. I am trying to do things that I used to be able to do in Cities Skylines 1, but this is a completely different game. It's a game that is not complete, you know? There are aspects of this that I think are going to change over time, but when I am trying to implement things that I used to be able to do in Cities Skylines 1, you can't really do that. And I am kind of struggling to find alternatives to be able to achieve those things. So I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later in this video. But yeah, I am struggling. The honeymoon phase is over. And don't get me wrong, I am enjoying this game. I wouldn't be playing it if I didn't, but things are starting to get a little bit more challenging, and I am trying to take it to the next level, trying to do things that I used to be able to do, but yeah, it's a little bit of a struggle, but that's fine. And if you're wondering why go to so much effort to try to make this entire new map, and you know, because what's the big deal? You know, it's just the map, it doesn't really matter, you can just change it as you go. The map is my favorite part about playing Cities Skylines, so to have a map that isn't what you want it to be actually is kind of everything, you know? I always love to start by making my map first and then building the city on top of it, and because we didn't have a map editor in Cities Skylines 2 and I was really excited to start this new series, I just dived into this one because I thought, you know what, I can make this work. We'll do some terraforming at some stage, but as you can see, things just aren't working out. You know, as much land as I buy up, I could not terraform quite as much as I really wanted to. The landscape, the terrain is just crazy in terms of elevation. And it's not just the fact that it's, you know, so high up in places and so low down at the water's edge. It's more that it doesn't really have any features, which means that you kind of have to make these features, these natural landscapes that are a bit more interesting and unique as you kind of build your city, which doesn't really work. I mean, you can kind of do it, but what I was finding, at least at this point, I was finding that because I'm trying to build the natural landscape and the city at the same time, neither one of them are looking quite right. And you'll see the real effects of that when I get to the city build, because I actually just straight up make some really bad decisions when it comes to building the city, which is, I mean, kind of crazy, you know. At first when I was building this here, I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of working, this is working fine, oh, I like this. And then it wasn't until I started recording a live play at the end of this episode So when I was actually, thinking that this was going to be the build, I was going to continue working on all this. I was recording the live play, I was flying around, and then I was just looking at going, what was I thinking? This is terrible. These are all bad ideas. Now, of course, with New York City being the main source of inspiration for New Dollarton, I wanted there to be a lot of similarities when it came to the landscape. There was going to be a whole bunch of different waterways and islands, and of course, a river that stretched throughout the entire map that was inspired by the Hudson River. I had a crack at trying to make this work, but as you can see, because of the way that I could buy up land and terraform around it, the landscaping just was a little bit extreme when it came to these sections. Because I couldn't buy up any extra land, I was really restricted with the amount of waterway and water passage I could create in these areas. And I guess I probably should have seen that coming. Like, I always knew that I couldn't terraform into the greater beyond, that further distant area, but I just kind of thought I could live with the fact that we were going to just chip away at this river and, figure out what all this landscape is going to look at when we were going to, eventually get more tiles and, expand out into some of these areas. But, man, this was not a pretty sight. But I definitely needed to sit there because I needed a river that kind of reflected the Hudson River. But then also on the topic of water, when you play around with the water levels, when you remove some of the water sources that are flowing into your map, it means that the height difference of the water that sits around the places around the city changes quite dramatically. Originally on this map, there is a water source that sits up here and then it trickles all the way down. You can actually see the ridge where it, originally used to go down the mountain. I really didn't like it because I felt like it was really unrealistic. So I removed it, I blocked it up using just some terraforming, and I thought that that was going to be a problem solved and easy done. However, because water takes such a long time to move within this game, it actually took ages for the water to finally level out to a place where it was going to sit permanently. And as you can see, my wharves no longer look quite as realistic because they are way too high up, at least for my liking. If I wanted these to work now, it would mean that I would have to drop my entire downtown. So I'd have to delete everything, drop down the landscape, drag out these roads again, zone it all up, and then I'd have something that I think would be a little bit more realistic. Somewhere between here and here. And the thing is, I'm in this map for the long run. I'm not building a map so I can play it for a couple of months. I plan to make this the city that I play Cities Skylines 2 on. This is the map, this is the series that we're going to be continuing for, look, I'm going to say a couple of years. That's how I like to play these series, this is how I like to play this game. And so if I'm going to be making a map or if I'm going to be playing on a city for multiple years, then the map absolutely has to be perfect. And I have been giving it to the map, just been really bagging on it and saying how bad all the terrain is and the terraforming and just how it doesn't work for the context of the city. But I really think that the wheels truly fell off at about this point. It's when I started building the city. This is where things really just went completely downhill. Now, in my defense, I do think that it's probably because I'm trying to do a whole bunch of terraforming and figuring out the layout of, this city and as well as the context of the map. But I think that I definitely made some poor decisions here. And it all started with the flattening of this mountain, which I did this because I didn't really know what to do with the back end, behind this mountain. We've got New Dimesburg on the other side, and I always had imagined that I'd do something on top of this mountain, some sort of little lookout or, a park that people can go and visit. But for some reason, I was focusing on the fact that we needed more residential zoning. We needed a lot of single family housing, and I didn't really have any space to put it, and I didn't really know what was going to be on the other side of the river because, at this stage, I didn't even know what that was going to look like. So I sort of figured, well, I guess the city still needs to look a little bit more expanded out. So, maybe we'll just flatten out this mountain and build a whole bunch of suburbia on the other side, or at least on top of where that mountain used to be. And that was a dumb decision. For starters, the mountain was a bit of a defining feature of the city, and by removing it, I felt like the city kind of lost a bit of its identity. So, changing such a huge part of the landscape, not late in the game, but definitely late in the development of the city, kind of didn't feel like the right thing to do. And it also kind of stopped this barrier between New Dimesburg and then whatever we're going to have on the other side. This was going to be a good opportunity before when we had this mountain to have this divide between, the different areas within this little island, I guess, that we're making. So I kind of felt like I'd really lost out on, these areas that were very much more iconic than what it is right now, because at the moment what I've created basically is just suburban sprawl, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm gonna need that within this city, but this was not the place to put it. Now, all that is not the reasons why it was the worst decision, and I'm going to talk about that in a little while. But all this build, it wasn't all bad. So for instance, I also made this custom cemetery, which I actually really liked. And so it's a bit of a shame that we're no longer keeping this save anymore. But I will be doing something similar, but I also really love the fact that, I am able to create these areas that are still functional as a cemetery. Obviously these paths and, the way it's laid out isn't functioning like a cemetery, but I am placing down a crematorium here, so it does do the same sort of thing. And I know I have said this before, but I am just absolutely hanging out for some mods to come in to take some advantage of the new mechanics that we have and the new tools that we have within this game, where you can hopefully maybe even drag out your own cemetery like this, kind of like what I'm doing right now, but maybe using the tools that are for the landfill and for the specialized industry. I can really see a time where modders are taking advantage of those tools and mechanics, so I'm really holding out for that. Let's just keep our fingers crossed for that, because that would be super powerful. That's going to be something that'll be absolutely needed. And I think that is what is so frustrating about the release of Cities Skylines 2, is that there is just so much potential. I mean, it is really hard not to play this game and to imagine, wouldn't it be cool if you could do this, and wouldn't it be cool if you could do that? And the problem is that we've had Cities Skylines 1, which is so fleshed out, it is so jam-packed full of content, probably too much content. I mean, let's be honest, if you're a new player going into Cities Skylines 1, I know it's overwhelming, but it is a game that has just been filled to the gills with all this special content that people have made and DLCs and mods. At this point, it'd be pretty much impossible not to be able to find exactly what you wanted, either on the Steam Workshop or through a DLC. This game is full of content, so it's really hard to then compare the two, because this is a game that is starting from scratch. So I can accept that, that is fine. A lack of bikes is fine. I would have loved bikes, but I can also see where that's going to fit in down the track, and I can also see all these other mechanics that I can play with instead of bikes. It's the same with more public transport, it's the same with variations in buildings and more train stations to place down. All those sort of stuff is fine, because I can see the things that we have to play with and the things that we don't, because you can kind of tell where things are going to be expanded later on. And that's not just DLCs, but you can see where custom assets and mods are going to really just sink their teeth into some of the gaps that we have. And that's great. I can't wait for that. I think the best part about playing Cities Skylines is the community that is behind this game, a community that is, talking about cities and sharing their ideas and sharing assets and mods and, showcasing their cities and, even the videos that have been made and just the discussions that's been had behind this game. I think it's just so much fun, and it's been kind of just getting stronger and stronger throughout the years. However, I think what the problem is at the moment is that we're kind of divided, because I think a lot of people are still just sticking with Cities Skylines 1 because you can do more in that game at the moment, and Cities Skylines 2 kind of introduces a whole bunch of extra stuff, but you can't make custom mods and assets at this stage, well, not officially, and that's kind of divided people too. But my biggest gripe at the moment with Cities Skylines 2, and I have mentioned this before, but I'm finding that a lot of people are creating cities that look very, very similar, because there's not a huge amount of variation when it comes to the types of cities that you can build. And I think that there is a really big missed opportunity to focus more on the environment and the landscape that you are building your city on. Now, of course, we do not have the map editor, so maybe this was something that they're planning for the map editor, but I kind of feel like they're two separate things, you know, because even in this, you know, this mayor mode, this mode where we are building and managing the city, which they've lent so heavily into, of course, it's a city building and management game, but I just wish that there was a bit of a focus on the environment as well, because I think that creating these natural environments are so important for the development of your city to make it look and feel more like a realistic place. Because at the moment, you are building what are pretty realistic looking cities. You know, I think that we do make some pretty realistic looking cities in Cities Skylines 2, but I think what lets it down is the environment, because they are all so similar. They're all surrounded by the same green grass texture. You can, of course, create streams and rivers and oceans and mountains and forests, but I don't think there's a huge amount of variation. I don't think there's been much of an emphasis. It definitely feels like the environment was an afterthought, or maybe this is stuff that's still being in development. You know, I think the fact that we don't have beaches is kind of, for me, kind of like, okay, well, that's definitely coming, because I know that they have to introduce beaches at some stage. But the fact that we can't really do much else with the environment is really disappointing for me, because I think that our cities are really lacking in any sort of realism because of that. I really think that this should have been something that was a focal point, something that should have been as absolutely essential part of the game. You know, how nice would it have been if, and again, I'm just going to dream big, and these are just things that I'm dreaming up, you know, that thing that I spoke about before, just all these endless possibilities with this game. But can you imagine like a mode we could kind of go into, and rather than placing trees manually and waiting for them to grow over time, there was, you know, these brushes, kind of like the forest brush tool that we had as a mod in Cities Skylines 1. And you kind of just, you know, go, oh, maybe I'll make a swamp, or maybe I'll make, you know, this wild bushland or this grassland. And you can kind of use these as these, you know, brushes that you could paint down your environment, and it would, you know, make it more wild and wildernessy. And maybe rather than using money to create these places, you were using environmental points. Maybe you earned these from making more environmentally better decisions, like building wind turbines or making, you know, recycling policies. I don't know, just ideas. And again, I'm just kind of like projecting. I'm doing that thing where you imagine the greatest potential for something. And of course, this game is like notorious for dreaming big, because there are just endless possibilities. So I understand you can't just implement everything, but I do wish there was just something extra. I wish we had a little bit more for the environment, because I do think that we're kind of missing that factor of this game. And I say all this because I love this game, you know, I love Cities Skylines, and I am really enjoying playing Cities Skylines 2. I just wish it was a little bit more, you know, there is just a lot that I wish was a little bit more fleshed out, and I'm glad that it is in the hands of Colossal Order and Paradox Interactive, because I do trust them to continue working on it. I think they've done a good job at fixing bugs and, you know, letting the community know what they're up to. But in saying all that, I am investing in this. There's a reason why I've spent so long working on this map, is because I do see how much potential it has, and I still really enjoy playing it. And I also think that it's going to be a lot of fun adding in all these mods and assets and adding in the DLCs into New Dollarton. And I'm excited just to get this place looking just super well laid out and thought out, when we can then start adding in these things. But you know what, let's end it here for the time lapse and jump back into a live play so I can go around and show you a little bit more about New Dollarton, the current version. So as you're probably thinking, you might be thinking, it's not that bad, what's wrong with it? Well, like I said, there are a whole bunch of things that I've done that I do not like. The map, I don't like that. I don't like what's going on down here. This doesn't work. I do want industry down here, but I don't know, that's not working out. There's just a whole lot of things that I just don't like about this. However, the biggest complaint that I have about the expansion that I've done within this episode is the fact that I have not respected the topography. Yes, I have not. Now, it's not because I got rid of that mountain. Well, it is kind of because I got rid of that mountain. Actually, let's get rid of that cloud. So what I have done is I have built in a way that the city just would not have been developed. So we have a plateau that stretches all across here, and it didn't really follow that path before. Before I was actually going to have the plateau kind of stretch out towards this way, but because I did all that terraforming in this episode, I decided to, well, I guess I've kind of been slowly building out this island and expanding out in a way that kind of stretches out this way. So it kind of means that I have all these roads kind of just cutting across this ridge, and you know, of course, there's going to be some situations where cities might do something like that, but I don't think it's how I want to expand out a city. I mean, can you kind of see what I'm talking about? I think that a road layout, you know, all the roads would be pointing in a direction like that as they stretch towards what is going to be the rest of, you know, this is going to be Stratton Island and, you know, expanding out into these sort of areas. I think we need the roads heading in that direction, whereas all of our roads are kind of just going wherever they like. And I don't think that works. Can you see what I mean? It just looks a little bit strange that they're all going like that. They should be going kind of like that. And I know it might seem like a really silly thing, and it is. It is a really silly thing, but it's the sort of things that I really appreciate when building a city, and, you know, I think about quite a lot. So the fact that I haven't done it like that really frustrates me, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I'm restarting this. There's a whole combination of all these factors. But yeah, that's it. Guys, what do you reckon? I know it's very frustrating that we're restarting this, but I do think that's the right decision. I am more looking forward to restarting and, you know, developing up in a different way than having to kind of work through an area that I just don't like anymore. But that's it. That's about it, guys. Dodgy episode, dodgy video. I'm sorry about that. Definitely my worst, but it's something that I felt like I needed to talk about, needed to get it off my chest. But I'm glad it's over. I'm glad it's done. I'm looking forward to sharing the map with you guys. You'll be able to download it and use it at the same time as I am. So I'm very excited to share that with you in a couple of days. And a big thank you to all the people over on Patreon supporting the channel, making videos like this possible. Maybe more like better videos than this possible. Kirsten Notte, Justin Sadunek, Edward Ritchie, Ekatzalada, Yerbert, Tony Perrick, Sam from STL, Bele, Keith Hoffman, Costed Lucian, and CJ Newton. Cheers, legends. I'll catch you all in the next one. See ya.